Hi guys, I'm Jack, and by the end of this video, you're going to have a step-by-step framework that you can use to hire in your business. So I'm a CEO of my own business, and I must have hired over 100 people in my 10 years in doing this job. We've dabbled with all sorts of hiring methods. We've tried it to do it ourselves. We've dabbled with recruitment agencies. Sometimes we've just ignored the problem as well. But what I'm saying is, I think I've amassed so much knowledge in that 10 years. I've pretty much now cracked what I would call a perfect hiring process, particularly if you're an SME and you can move quickly. So what I want to do today is package all of that knowledge up into one video that you can watch and follow along so that you can nail hiring in your business too. Hiring has become so much more accessible for small and medium-sized businesses these days. I think due to an influx of some fantastic tools that are out there on the market, not to mention the impact that AI has had as well. Recently in our business, we hired for a customer service advisor, and I'm going to use that example today as the context for the step-by-step guide that I'm going to go through. So recently I started posting tips and guides and advice and thoughts on LinkedIn about hiring in your SME. I've grown to about 5,000 followers, and we're trying to get that a little bit higher. So if you like what you see here, please head over to LinkedIn and give me a follow. There'll also be a written guide which accompanies this video. So if you're not up for sitting and watching, you can download that and follow along in your own time. But what I would love is at the end of this video, or by the time you finish reading the guide, you've got some usable steps and frameworks that you can follow to get started with a more structured approach and a more planning-based approach to hiring in your business too. So with all that being said, let's get started and let's jump into it. So my SME hiring framework has 3 stages. Stage number 1 is figuring out what you need. This is things like skills, traits, things that the candidate is going to need to actually do to be successful in the job. The second stage is who. So the second stage is all about who. Who do you actually want to hire? What type of person are you looking for? So not necessarily can they do the job, but are they going to be well suited to doing the job? And stage number 3 is essentially taking the output of the first 2 stages and building that into a hiring pipeline using some of the tools that I mentioned earlier. The video today is going to be structured exactly in this way. We're going to look firstly at what, then move on to who, and then we're going to take the output of that and plug it into the tools that we use here in this business to show you how you can do the same too. So our starting point is what, okay? What, not who. This might be a little bit against the flow of thinking that's out there already, and who is important, okay, and we will get to that. But we're trying to put forward a framework here that you can deploy quickly. So we need to get into the nitty-gritty straight away. So we're going to have a look at what. Job description, what sort of tasks is this person going to be doing, and we need to think quite big. So let's map out what. In my example, we're looking at a customer service executive. This person in my business is going to be doing one core activity, which is helping customers with their queries. The methods in which we put that forward in our business are multiple. So we have phone calls. So this person is going to be answering the phone and actually speaking to customers on a day-by-day basis. They are going to be responding to emails in the ticketing system that we use. And the third thing is that they are going to be answering chats. So we have a multi-channel support to approach: phone, email, and chat. And we're going to need this person to be delivering support across all 3 of those channels. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is just understand what those tasks look like in a bit more detail. So I'm going to map this out here. So we talked about support across 3 channels: phone. And to be honest, I'm going to put email and chat in the same category. Once we have those tasks mapped out, I'm now going to start to look at aligning some very high-level skills to those. So in my business, on the phone, what I'm looking for are people to have excellent verbal communication skills. The other thing that we consider to be really important in our business is active listening. From an email and chat perspective, this is more about the written word. These are our keyboard warriors. So As opposed to the phone, we're going to look at written comms. And generally problem solving, I think, actually applies to both. I'm going to add that down here as well. And I would say the final thing for emails, and particularly this is sort of focused on the chat side of things, is the ability to multitask. The system that we use allows our agents to be managing multiple chats at once. So it may be that they've got 2 chats on the go, responding to an email ticket at the same time, and they're answering a call. It's a bit of an extreme example, but it can happen on the really busy days. So multitasking is also key. I've just knocked that together for a support executive in my business. I understand my business really well. I know what our team are doing day in, day out, and I know what quality standards that I'm looking for. Have a think about the roles in your business and have a think about the core tasks, like the core mission of that role, and think about the skills that are aligned to that. Whatever example works for you. It might be a marketing executive, it might be somebody in finance, it might be somebody who's operating heavy machinery. You know your business better than anybody. So pause the video, go through a little exercise like this in your head and see what skills you can come up with. Tip number 3 is to use AI. So I'm going to jump over into Claude here and speak to it to try and get some clarity and some help on how to map skills to a job role. I'm hiring for a customer support executive in my business. Their primary mission is to help our customers with their queries in our business. There are 2 primary ways that they're going to do that. One is over the phone, speaking to customers, and the second is in written format, where they'll be engaging with customers over email and by using chat. Some of the things that are really important to me in terms of the quality standards over the phone is to making sure that our team are professional, polite, patient, and really seek to help to resolve the problem for the customer. We have 5-star customer service on Trustpilot, and we want to make sure that we retain those standards and those levels. They need to have a lot of empathy as well, because sometimes when you're dealing with these types of requests, the customer on the other end of the phone can be getting quite stressed and quite aggravated and quite agitated about the fact that they're struggling. On the written side, what's important to me is really good quality verbal communication. I hate it when our team makes spelling mistakes, when there's incorrect use of punctuation and grammar and things like that. So I want to make sure that the writing is both accurate, but also like concise as well. And then the other thing I guess to bear in mind in terms of the day-to-day working of our business is that it can be quite busy. So the phone can be ringing, there can be lots of emails going at the same time, there can be chats like pinging up as well. So it can be like a high-paced environment. So the output that I'm looking for is for a set of skills that would map well to the high-level description of the role that I've given. Okay, so what have we got? A set of communication skills that will help map well to the role that you described. Communication, customer facing, organizational, operational, professionalism and standards, technical and adaptive. Okay, cool. This is a really good starting point. What I would probably do next is take some of these skills out, start to map them down, get some of the team involved, and use this just as a starting point to help us brainstorm it further. I think if you've literally just got a little nudge to help you get going, then the other creative ideas just naturally come out. And if you do that in a team as well, it's going to be even more effective. So don't be afraid of using AI to just help you get going with it and help you get started with it. But I would also just advise a little bit of caution. Don't take everything it's saying at face value, and really think about what it is that you want for your business. Okay, so in stage 1, we have started with what, and the output of that is we have a set of skills which we've now committed onto our hiring worksheet. I want to just make a quick point about skills, because skills definitely isn't everything. Skills can be learned. You're not necessarily born with them, and they can kind of atrophy and disappear over time as well. It really depends on your appetite as a business and what it is that you're looking for, the level of seniority, the level of experience, just the general sort of feel that you get when you're meeting with candidates. We're not identifying skills to make sure that the person that we're interviewing and the person that we're assessing actually has those skills, but sometimes it's about their capacity to learn those skills as well. All that being said, it is still really important to identify what they are, because the question might be, do they have them? If the answer is no, You can then move on to a second question, seeing someone who already has the skills from their previous experience and can kind of hit the ground running. This is where your general feel and this is where your sort of nuanced touch and your understanding of your business comes in. So skills, important to identify, but they shouldn't be the master of all. Sometimes it's about assessing capacity to learn and capacity to attain that skill in the future. So let me try and bring some of that theory to life with an example. When we were hiring for this customer support exec role, we met a candidate who had the skills required to do the written comms. They could write empathetic emails. Their spelling, punctuation, and grammar was to a good quality, the level that we expect. However, they did not have the skill of the tool that we use to manage our tickets called Freshdesk. On the assessment side of the hiring, we had actually weighted the written comm skills much higher than we had the tooling. We have the capacity, we have the know-how to teach somebody Freshdesk in a matter of days. But what we don't have is the time to teach somebody how to write an empathetic email, because that can sometimes take months. We needed somebody to hit the ground running. There may have been occasions in the past where we did have the time and we did want to invest that into teaching somebody sort of that softer skill, writing style and empathy. In this particular occasion, there was more of an urgency, so that was a bit more of a non-negotiable for us. So sometimes you can play around with the weighting of the importance of the skills depending on the specific situation and the capability that you have to teach somebody something about your business. So now we have our list of skills. We'll go over and commit that onto our hiring notepad. That allows us to move on to stage 2, which is all about who. Okay, so let's go a little bit deeper into the concept of traits. So a little bit like what we did with skills previously, but now we want to identify these. So how would I go about identifying traits for a role in particular? I think what you've got to remember is that this part of it is not necessarily an exact science. But if you just put like a smidge of effort into the planning, it will dramatically improve the chances of success here. So here are the best ways that I've figured out to identify traits for a particular role. So firstly, it's to have a look at the skills and the tasks that we'd mapped out in the previous role. Here we had verbal comms, problem solving, active listening, written comms, and multitasking. So if you just sit and think about that, right? Okay, so verbal comms, going to be on the phone all day. This type of person is, and I know my business as well. I know we get a lot of calls. We get somewhere between 50 and 100 calls each day. So I think for sure this person's going to need to have like a little bit of, patience. It can happen that some of our customers get a little bit aggressive and a little bit agitated sometimes. So, like a level of resilience is needed. Another thing that's really important to me in the business is that if somebody doesn't know the answer to a question, they don't guess or they don't make it up. So I think what that links into as far as traits is concerned is integrity. So now I've got a starting point. The second thing that I would do to build this side of the traits identification out is to speak again with the people in my business, like we did in skills, to understand what traits are needed to be successful in this role. What is it that they think they have? What is it that they think their natural personality types are like, which make it so that they are successful? Let's sit down with them, let's ask them, and let's broaden the brainstorming so that we are considering more than just these 3 traits here. And again, the final thing that I would do is jump over into AI. I think we did a good example previously in skills of a type of prompt that you can use. So this time I would maybe give it the skills that we've already identified and ask it to map a number of traits to that. So don't hesitate to use your AI thinking partner for the planning part of your trait identification. Okay, so within the who chapter of our hiring system, we've looked at traits and we've looked at how to identify those. Next, we need to look at the second component of who, which is all about culture. Now, this is not the culture of the person that you're hiring. This is not necessarily the culture of the person, you, the business owner who is doing the hiring. This is the culture of your company. Now, there is a lot of material out there about company culture, and I do encourage you to do your own research on it. The first question we need to ask, though, is why is company culture so important in the hiring process? So you may have heard the term culture fit when it comes to hiring. He's not a good culture fit. She's a great culture fit. And that is what we're getting into here. So to understand if a candidate is a good culture fit or not, the first thing that you need to do is know what your company culture is. How many of you reading this guide or watching this video really know what your company culture is? Company culture can be defined, mapped in lots of different ways, from the finger in the air all the way through to the very, very scientific. But for the purpose of this hiring system, here is my take. So culture is not, and I repeat, it is not what you have written down on the front of your company notepads. It is not the thing that is the screensaver or background on people's computers. It is not the words that you came up with on that team building day. Things like, I don't know, trust and integrity and team and stuff like that. That is not culture. They are just words. How do you communicate, do more teamwork, be more teamwork to a team member? For me, it's really just not specific enough. For me, what company culture is it's all about behavior. What are the behaviors that you want to see in your business? Culture is seen in those moments when the phones are ringing nonstop and everybody's, in a training session. Culture is seen in the moments when you turn up 20 minutes late to a meeting. Culture is seen when a customer calls you at like 9 p.m. in the evening and is asking an answer to a question, and it's, I don't know, Christmas Eve. What you do in those moments really defines what your company culture is. So what I encourage you to do, and this is not necessarily for this customer service executive role, this is for your whole business. So you do this exercise once and you've got it nailed for life. I want you to have a think about the behaviors that you want to see in your business. Feel free to brainstorm it from a complete blank sheet of paper perspective, or have a think about the things that you've seen in your business that you think, yeah, that is amazing. I want to see more of that. Or think about the things that you've seen in your business and think, I really don't like the fact that he or she did that. Use the negative examples, turn them into the positive affirmations, and define what the behaviors are that you want to see. Culture is behavior. What are the things that I want to see in my business? So there are a few, when I did this brainstorming activity, there were a few that sprung to mind. The first, for anyone who knows the culture that we have here in this business, I love to see people take a break in the day and go and eat their lunch. I know that might sound a little bit weird, but I am a firm believer that stopping for an hour in your day and eating food, ideally together with your colleagues, is just like one of the most important things that you can do. So, to that end, when we're hiring someone, I might put forward a scenario to them in an interview or in an assessment type thing, which is something like, you're in the office in your first couple of weeks and it's really busy. The phones are ringing, the tickets are coming in, and you're a little bit understaffed in the team that day. What do you do? Option one, you skip lunch. It's too busy. There's no time to eat. Option two, you run down to the supermarket, you grab like a really crappy meal deal, sandwich, crisps, and a Diet Coke, and you run back to the office and you eat it at your desk and you carry on working while you're stuffing a sandwich in your face. Or option number three, you decide, you take ownership of the fact that I am going to be more productive if I take a break now, recharge, rest, and come back. In my business, I actually want the answer to be number three. I know that might sound a little bit weird, but I think that staying disciplined with things like that sets a foundation for the right type of behavior and the right type of work that we want to see moving forward. Almost to the extent, actually, if I ever see someone eating lunch at their desk, I walk up to them and say, what are you doing? And almost to the point now where people know that they just can't do that. We have a staff room, go and eat your food, go and eat your lunch in the staff room. So that's a bit of a weird example, but I think it really shines a light on the point of behaviors that I want to see in the business, and just like an anecdotal thing which helps add one piece of the jigsaw into what our culture is. Of course, we need to look at the other pieces of the jigsaw as well. So let me give a few more examples that aren't necessarily like lunch related. So the first that really springs to mind for me, what I want to see, the behavior that I want to see in the business, is my team tackling the difficult conversation that they know they need to have. I think quite often in work and in life, there can be that kind of thing that's niggling at your brain, and you can't stop thinking about it. Maybe it's keeping you up at night. Maybe you've got a little bit of anxiety about it or something. My firm belief is that the way to tackle that is to tackle the difficult conversation that you need to have and that you're probably putting off. So another component here that I like to see is when my team go and have the difficult conversation. So let me add my culture points on here. Mine are a bit weird. Have lunch, difficult conversation, and let's add a few more on there for good measure. So adding a few more on, another thing that I love to see in the business is when people spot something, and it can be anything that isn't right, anything from there's a load of cardboard boxes in the corner of the office, which is making the place look messy, all the way through to why is this process defined in this way? Because it's definitely not optimized and it's not creating a good customer experience. When anybody spots something that is not good, that is substandard, they should say something. They should try and do something to change it or to improve it. They should go move the cardboard boxes, or that they should suggest to their manager that this process should go through a change review. So basically, if you spot something that's not right, do something that can invoke change. I think the key there is don't sit on it and carry on with something that you're not comfortable with. And then the final thing that I will add on here is when you're building teams, we have a team of about 35 here. There will always naturally be those sort of gossipy and sort of more like chit-chatty moments that might happen in your team. You might be sort of slagging off a colleague behind their backs. What I love to see is if that happens, the person who's in receipt of that information actually goes back and challenges that person to do something about it. Because often if you're gossiping or if you're moaning about something, it kind of means that you've got a problem. And what I want to see as the business leader is I want to see those problems sort of bubbled up to the surface. So if you're having a moan about something, if you have a gossip about something, really like the reaction to that should be to go and tell somebody who can do something about it. So anyone who is in receipt of kind of like gossipy information, what I love to see is that they then challenge that person to do something about it. Doesn't always work, but we try our best. So I've come up with a few ideas here: lunch, difficult conversations, change, and gossiping. What I would really strongly encourage you to do, and remember, you only need to do this once, is actually send out a survey to your team members and ask them to describe examples of behaviors that they have appreciated or they have thought, wow, that is great that person did that. They don't have to identify anyone. It's not about catching people out. And on the other side of the coin, what are the things they've seen where they really didn't like that? I did that recently in my business, and I actually still have to sift through all the answers and try and consolidate them into some cultural pillars. I have a few to kind of get me going, but the input from everybody in my team is actually the thing that defines that culture. So it's like, can we almost get instead of having, the trust, respect, positivity, the words that we talked about on the wall previously, can we actually have almost like a handbook or a guidebook of what behaviors we want to see in the organization? Once we've got that, we can test for them, we can check against them, and we can assess candidates on them, which is why it fits in so strongly to hiring. Bad culture fit can kill businesses. If you've got the wrong type of person in your organization who is just going left when everybody else is going right, it can be poisonous and it can be toxic and it can drag the organization down and it can take the leader off the goal of running or hopefully growing the business, because all your time is consumed with people problems. People problems are the ones that keep you up at night, are the ones that wake you up in the morning. And fundamentally, if we can get hiring right, we are going to mitigate those people problems so that they don't distract and they don't veer you off the work that you're actually trying to push forward. So the culture piece is really, really critical. Do it once, keep an eye on it, refine it, tweak it. But the first thing is really to understand it. So again, we can test for it in interview. So now we've identified our culture behaviors, and I'm just going to use this example of 4 here, but what I'm hoping is that you come up with a longer list of examples of behaviors. Once we've got that list, what I would love you to do is to give that list to AI and ask it to help you to consolidate it into 3, possibly 4, absolute maximum 5 culture pillars for your organization. I fed a few of mine into AI, and here's what I got. So the first pillar that we came up with was rest and sustainability. Rest and sustainability kind of encapsulates some of the examples of the behaviors that I want to see in my organization. That's brought to life most pertinently through the lunch example that I gave previously. Now what we need to do is think about how do we interview against that? How do we test for that when we're meeting a candidate for the first time? I did give an example of that before, where we give a sort of a multiple choice question, which could be put forward in some kind of assessment. But this is a great area where you can reflect, you can brainstorm with your team, or again, use AI. What are the types of questions that I should be asking here? So here's some examples for rest and sustainability. How do you protect your energy during a long work week? What does a good working day look like for you? If the person's coming back with examples of how they are, just working from 9 in the morning till 9 in the evening every night, and they're sort of taking no rest, you've got to ask yourself, actually, does that fit in with this culture pillar that we believe in our organization is super important? And remember, it might be different in your organization. I'm not saying everybody should champion rest and sustainability. It might not be the right thing for you. Culture is personal and it is unique to every single business. So what we do here doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do the same, but what you have to do is identify it, codify it, and test against it. Pillar number 2 is ownership and agency. So our second pillar is ownership and agency. I think that's probably fueled most by the behaviors that I want to see in terms of if you see something that isn't good, do something about it, whether that's change it yourself or speak to your manager or speak to someone more senior than you who knows how to change it or who can help you change it. That is really about not sitting on your laurels, not just sort of letting something that's substandard just like wash over you and pass by you. Take ownership for it, have some agency on it, and show some initiative to even sort of suggest that change. That is something that I really want to see. And that's the type of thing that would be rewarded in this organization. So how can we test for ownership and agency? Questions like, tell me about a time that you've noticed something that wasn't working and nobody asked you to fix it. What did you do? Have you ever spotted a problem that you couldn't solve yourself? How did you handle it? What we're looking for there are answers that will feed into the explanation of what ownership and agency means in your business. So again, interviews are not just these like random chats where we are like saying, oh, where did you go to school? And have you been enjoying the nice weather? And you spend all the time like doing the talking. We are asking focused questions that help us assess skills, traits, and culture pillars that we want to see in our organization. And our third culture pillar is what we call radical candor. Okay, that is fueled by the examples such as having the difficult conversation. And if someone is gossiping to you, well, ideally don't gossip, but if somebody is gossiping to you, challenge them to go and fix that in some way. So some examples of questions that we can use for radical candor. Tell me about a difficult conversation that you are putting off in your life right now. Let's, in the interview, go through that. You could be a little sparring partner for them and they could practice on you. And the challenge that you could give them after the interview is to go and have that difficult conversation with the person that they might need to do it with. It might be their mom, it might be their friend, it might be their husband or wife. Encourage them to have the difficult conversation because that's what would be encouraged here. Another example, have you been in a situation where colleagues complained about someone not in the room? What did you do in that situation? Sometimes in an interview, you can kind of get a feel for the company culture that the person is experiencing right now as well, and ask them if that's something that they gel with and if that's something that they connect well with. But ultimately, we're looking for answers that feed back into what our definition of radical candor is. The definitions of our culture pillars are not necessarily words, they are examples of behavior. So behind each of these pillars, there should be specific examples. Okay, Congrats if you've made it this far, because what we have done now is we have completed the planning process for your role. We have identified the skills, the traits, and the culture pillars that we want to test for, that we want to assess for when hiring for our customer support exec. So one of the key things that I would advise to bring all of your planning together is to complete the SME hiring worksheet. This is essentially a piece of paper, whiteboard. It might be something that you build on your computer as well, just so that you've got a centralized place where you put all of the components of the role that you're going to need to take over to the tools when we start to build it. So I'm going to spend a bit of time writing my skills, traits, and culture pillars on the board here so that I complete my hiring worksheet and I'm ready to move on to stage 3. Okay, so spend a bit of time mapping the skills. We've gone for verbal comms, problem solving, active listening, written comms, and multitasking. There were a few in the brainstorming process that we wanted to add in there, but we didn't want to go past 5, and I would encourage you to kind of keep this list for each one no longer than 5. Say 3 is probably your minimum, and 5 is probably your max. Into the traits side, we settled on patience, resilience, and integrity. And our culture pillars, we've defined once, and we'll roll them out again: rest and sustainability, ownership and agency, and radical candor. So we've completed our hiring worksheet, and we're now ready to take this over to the tools to start the easy bit, which is building the job, getting it live, and start inviting candidates to apply. Okay, we are now in stage 3 of this process, which is taking the work that we did in our hiring worksheet. I've just created a digital version here, and we are going to plug that into our ATS. We use a fantastic ATS called Teamtailor. We have no other connection to them apart from the fact that we pay for this tool and we just use it day to day in our business. But there are lots of ATSs out there, and I'm hopefully going to have a play around with more and more of them as we gain more followers and share insights into how hiring in your small business can be one of the best things you ever decided to do. So we're in Teamtailor and we want to get a job going. So we're going to come to jobs. We're going to create a new job and we're going to give it an internal reference. Let's just call it customer service number 1. You can set up some templates where it pulls through like a pre-build of a job, but let's not worry about that too much for now. Let's just go ahead and create this. Okay, so we are now in the job for a customer support advisor. Now, you just saw me write an internal reference, but this is going to be the external reference for the job ad title. I would always advise using a more conventional set of vocab when advertising a job to the outside world. Sometimes you'll have unique vocabulary to your business, which kind of makes sense to you, but not to the outside world. So keep it simple for the people who are following along and who are applying. Next up, we have the job description. Now, all of my content here has been built into a template, so I'm not going to actually go through and show you what it looks like to write a job description. This is really just to show you how this job works and how I've kind of pre-configured it. So it's going to be a quick walkthrough. Within the job description, we do a few things. We put the salary right at the top. We want to make that really clear. We give a high-level overview about our company. We talk about kind of vision and mission. We break down how we work. So we're split into 3 different brands, and we go to market in 3 different ways. We have a link out to our careers site, which is quite a neat way of just giving people an idea of what it is like to work at your business. Would really advise you to spend some time working on a careers site. Ours is actually just hosted in our main website, but you can build them in certain ATSs. I know Teamtailor does have that feature. We're not using it yet, maybe one day. And then we jump into the actual description of the role. So this is where we go back to our planning process, and we get really clear on what that role is. Now, we've got kind of a macro view, like what is the core purpose of the role and what are some of the standards that we're looking for. And then we jump into the typical day-to-day. So we have a kind of a macro, and a micro description of the role. What I would encourage in these two sections is to not use any bullet points whatsoever. It's always very tempting, and you always see in job adverts lots of bullet points. I use a few because they do make sense, but when you're describing the role, tell a story and structure it narratively. I just think it's so much more engaging and it makes you stand out from the crowd. Also, I think you only want to be working with candidates who are like really interested in this job. So if they are interested in the job, they will spend time to read something that's narratively structured, which is slightly more difficult for the candidate to read. Whereas if you just give them bullet points, they can skim through them, skim past them, and might not get a real sense of what the job is. Next, we're into kind of skills and traits, experience, what you'll bring with you and what experience that you'll have. So you can see here, that's the first area where bullet points become of use. And you'll notice that we have skills and traits listed here that we have taken from our customer service hiring worksheet, which I've built a digital copy of now from the whiteboard version. So things like communication skills, active listening, problem solving, resilience, patience. There are one or two other words that we put in here, other bits of vocab we use to kind of like tell the story. And we might add things in here that we're not actually even testing for. But remember, this is all about getting somebody excited about the job. So make sure you have a think carefully about what you put in here. Experience is an interesting one, depending on the role and depending on how long you're prepared to wait for somebody to get up to speed. If you're going to be like teaching them the skills, experience might not be critical. So for this role, we've decided that it's not critical and that we can teach you how to do the job. But what we do ask is that you embrace an attitude of approachability and coachability, always eager to have a go and curious to learn more. So we've made it very clear that experience is not required for this role. And we personally believe that is where you can do that, you should do that. We then give an overview of the interview process. So we have 4 broad stages: an application, a short call with one of our team, a competency interview, which is where we assess skills and some traits, and then a culture interview where we assess some other traits and the cultural compatibility. We then give an overview of our culture because we think it's fair to present candidates with a broad understanding of the things that you're going to be testing them against. So we've mentioned what skills and what traits will be required, and we've also mentioned what our culture looks like. We've put some of our pillars here: rest and sustainability, ownership and agency, and radical candor. So give them a clue. Don't just allow them to drive blind. There's no point in sort of testing somebody for something where they don't have any idea whatsoever about what they're being tested for. But don't give them the whole culture handbook either, because on some level you want to assess if they naturally have that sort of compatibility. Then you'll notice this little sentence here which asks the candidate to please include the word sunflower in your application. So you might be thinking, okay, what the hell is this? This is what we call our Easter egg. So we bury a very simple, a very kind of random instruction right in the middle of the job ad. And then we ask the candidate to insert that in the application process. And yes, it's a bit of a trick, but it is a legitimate way, in our view, of ensuring that the job advertisement has been read correctly and been read thoroughly. We get so many applications where this gets missed, and it just says so much about an applicant who has not included this word, and it says so much about those that do. And I know for a fact that when my team are hiring, it's very rare that anybody who missed this actually gets through to the next stage. So again, we only want people to work in the company who are interested in working in the company and therefore interested in the job. So you can only be interested in the job if you've thoroughly read what it is. So that's why we include that, and I'd advise you to do the same too. Next up, why PC Group? So we have some statements about why we are a compelling employment proposition, things like we're a family-owned business with no corporate burdens. We have diverse departments. We have benefits, which are listed here. We are a B Corp, which you can read about more in this link. So think about the things that make your company a great place to work and, sell them to your applicants in the job description. I think it's a really important part. And then finally, a DEI statement right at the end. That's becoming commonplace in any job advertisement these days. So please include that. You can copy this one straight out of any of our jobs that are online. Our ATS gives us opportunity to put a little pitch in. So pitch is just a short statement about why this job should be of interest. It's limited to 200 characters, so it's like use them wisely and put an elevator pitch in about why you should come and work for the company. You can then add some kind of metadata. So which department is this in? What's the location, the actual status, whether it's hybrid, fully remote, in office, managing expectations about response time, salary. You can customize some of these metadata points as well. So if there are key things that you want to add in your jobs that you'd like to be kind of filterable or included on reports, that's where you do that here or in the settings. You add the recruiting team. So I'm going to be the lead recruiter on this one, but I could add some colleagues if I wanted to. We always apply our plain job ad template because we just like the clean look of it. You can do some fancy things like change the color of the buttons and the text that appears on there. You can add a background image. You can add a video background. We've not tried that yet, maybe one day. But let's just save this draft, and then using this little preview button, let's just have a quick look at how that's looking. So this is what I want to see. I want to see like lots of white space. I want to see a clean, clear description. So I'm seeing what I expect to see here. This is looking good. You can see that the little apply button pops up as I'm scrolling, so you can fast track to the application at any point. We got the metadata points highlighted here, got the about PC group. And okay, now here we're into the application. So you can scroll to the bottom and get to the application that way, or if you are halfway down, you can click apply and it will just pop up nicely for you. This is the application process which is presented to the candidate, but before we get into that, let's jump back into Teamtailor and configure that in the second step, which is the application process. Okay, we are now in the application process. So this is where we configure how we want the applicant to apply. So there is some personal information that we will typically capture, things like name, email address. You can choose whether you want those to be mandatory, optional, or indeed off. So what do we like? We like the name, mandatory. Email, I think it's a setting in Teamtailor that has to be there all the time. We do like the phone to be mandatory because part of our process is to call them. Address, we don't care at this stage. CV, it is mandatory, but my views on it are that CVs are kind of pointless. All I really want on CVs are where they've worked previously and like the personal section, like the hobbies and what they're into outside of work. I kind of skim through CVs personally. So I wish there was a way for previous experience to just be uploaded. Sometimes you get that from looking at someone's LinkedIn account. But it's kind of administrative, but you just sort of need the CV. So that's why we have it as mandatory. But how we then use it is very different. We don't need any additional files, and we definitely don't need the cover letter. We do not want the cover letter. I'll explain why in a second. Next up, we ask the candidate some questions. Now, these are questions that we have configured ourselves, and you can yourself add and create new questions in Teamtailor. So you can see we've got quite an extensive question bank here, and you can always add more. These are some that we add as part of the application process. So are you able to work from our office 2 days a week? Would you consent to a basic DBS check being performed? Do you currently live in the UK and have right to work? These are some things our HR department just want to have in there, because if you don't have that, if you can't do that, you can't qualify. You see this is a must answer yes question. And if you don't answer yes, let's just say that's a no and that's a no, I believe it is impossible to go ahead and apply for the application. How did you find this job? So we're really interested in this. So we give some options: LinkedIn, Indeed, social media, PC group, careers page, or other. And has somebody who works in our company told you about this job? If so, who? It's a very important reason why we put this on. And that is because we incentivize our team quite generously, actually, to refer candidates in for job ads. I think it's one of the best kept secrets, but when you're hiring yourself, when you go on that journey to make your hiring process your own, sourcing candidates is hard, but using your team and using your professional network is one of the best ways to do that. So internally, we incentivize our team for every successful hire that they implement and that manages to get past a certain time frame in the business, like a probation period or something, will be paid £750. So it's a pretty decent and it's pretty generous incentive. Sometimes it comes off and sometimes the person just applies naturally as well. So It's definitely not on every role where we're paying that out. It's a really useful way of building up a candidate pipeline. And then this question, my favorite question of them all: why are you a great fit for this role? That is definitely mandatory. And if I can just jump over to the application process and go to this question, why are you a great fit for this role? I then add a little subtext on this, which I think is important to spend time on. We don't ask for a formal covering letter, but use this answer to write down why you feel you'd be brilliant in this role. Use your own style of writing and be yourself. P.S. Our hiring team places a lot of emphasis on what you write here, so this is your chance to go for it. I remember recently adding that little bit in because I felt like applicants weren't taking this bit seriously enough. Like, this is our replacement for a cover letter. And the reason that it is a long free text box is because, in theory, I want people to write something in there in that moment. And it doesn't need to be as structured and formal as a cover letter, but it needs to be genuine and authentic and like tailored to what they've read in the job ad and tailored to any research they might have done on our company. Also, interestingly, when we're debriefing on the candidates and making a final decision, I come back and ask to see what they wrote here again. So this is really, really important for me. And it's probably one of the strongest indicators of whether or not someone will go through to interview, but also whether they may get the job when we get to the decision-making process. So have a think about what qualifying questions and what kind of key data points you want to capture, and you can add those in here, but those are ours. And then we have responses. So these are like auto-generated emails that people get when they apply. So we just threw something together quite quickly there, but this is all about like candidate experience. And then we have a reject message as well. So whenever someone gets rejected from the process, they do get this email. That is everything in the application stage. So let's move on to the next phase. Okay, we are on to the next stage, which is called stages. So this is the area of our ATS where we actually define what the recruitment process is going to look like for our candidates. So this is what we have set up. Stage one is inbox. This is when we receive an application. Each stage has a guide time and the ability to turn on what is called anonymous mode. We'll show you what anonymous mode looks like shortly, but that is turned on for the inbox stage. Next up, we have the reviewing stage, where we move an application to a category called reviewing, which means we're spending time looking through the data that's been put forward. So look at the CV, we'll look at the answers given to the questions, we'll look to see if they caught the Easter egg or not. And we're still in anonymous mode for reviewing. Next up, we have a stage called first call. This is where we actually call the applicant. We actually try and just catch them off guard and have a conversation with them that they've not really been able to plan for. We're just trying to get a feel for, if they have good telephone manner, if they're able to communicate clearly, just get a sense of what it is like to chat with them. Following that, we have our competency interview. This is where we're assessing skills and some traits. We then have culture interview, which is where we're assessing some traits and culture fit. And then the final stage is offered, whether they have been given the offer or not. So within Teamtailor, we're able to assign a stage to one of these different sort of phases. So we have screening, interview, and offer. So it's just sort of putting the candidate in essentially in a category. So are we screening them? Are we interviewing them? And have we offered them? That's just useful, I think, for some of the sort of back-end metrics. Within stages, there's the ability to add some of these actions. So as I say, like guide time, whether there should be deadlines on them or not, the ability to do a quick rejection or anonymous mode. We don't really use any of these actions apart from the guide time and the anonymous mode in the first two sections. We'll go into anonymous mode a little bit later. You can completely customize this yourself. You can sort of like move things around. You can add new stages. So we have, in some roles that we do, we conduct assessments. So like real world assessments, telephone call scenarios, and maybe written tasks or conducting a little sort of multiple choice test type thing. Sometimes we'll include a stage for that as well, depending on the overall process. But this is the stages that we have put together for this job. So next up, we are into the evaluation. So this is one of the most important parts of the ATS. So this is one of the parts where those in the business who are involved in the hiring process at any stage can put forward their assessment, their opinion, their views, their score of the candidate. But that score has to be given based on a number of things. Those things, you guessed it, are the skills and the traits. What we can do in this ATS Teamtailor is we can list the skills and traits. We can list the skills and traits that are required for this job, the skills and traits which we want to make an assessment against for this job. So we've got some in here that you'll remember back from our customer service hiring worksheet. So things like customer focus, problem solving, verbal communication, written communication, empathy, patience. There's a couple of things in here, I think from the last time that we hired, which differ slightly to our worksheet, but you're sort of getting the gist there. The blue is the skills and the yellow is the traits. So they do make that distinction. We could go really deep into how we structure this database and how you can do skill and trait mapping across your whole organization from a role perspective and from a people perspective. But we're just, for now, using the tool in a very basic way, and we're just adding skills and traits as we feel we need them for particular jobs. You can add a weighting, whether that is low, medium, or high. So we talked about that a little bit earlier in the video, and mentioned that certain skills and traits may be of a slightly lower weighting and some maybe of a slightly higher weighting. So usage of tools, for example, maybe down on the lower end, whereas some of the sort of verbal communication stuff we may place as something higher. And you can see as you start to, let me just do some examples here, as you start to provide weightings across the board, you can see that the percentages in the skills and traits change, so you can really get specific about what you want. For now, I'm just going to leave everything in medium. Next up is what I would say are my favorite feature of this ATS, which is the interview kits. The interview kits are essentially a custom-built guide which anyone involved in the interviewing process can open up and have on screen while they're conducting an interview. And it helps them with a number of things. It helps them generate ideas for questions. It helps them stay on track with the assessments that we are actually trying to make. And most importantly, we are able to pull specific skills and traits into each interview kit. So you'll see we have 3 interview kits for this role. We have one for the first call, we have one for the competency interview, and we have one for the culture interview. And you can see that the kits have been aligned to the different stages which we configured in the previous section. So the first call kit is assigned to the first call stage. The competency interview kit is assigned to the competency interview stage. The culture fit interview kit is assigned to the culture interview stage. So you see how it's all aligned. And let's actually open one of these interview kits to get a real sense of what it is. So we'll look quickly at the first call. So this is just showing me a preview. And what I've done here is I've added some text to give the person in our business who's going to be carrying out the first call a scope, a process, some ideas on how they can conduct that first call. So let's have a look at some of the key parts within there. The first call is an opportunity to get a sense of what it is like to interact with this person. Can they communicate well? Are they showing genuine interest in the company or the role? Here's some ideas for conversation. What was the motivation for applying for the position? How did they hear about it? Skills and experience. Do you have relevant experience for the position? How many years? What kind of work environment do you thrive in? This is kind of moving into culture fit. So we're not conducting an interview necessarily, but we're just giving them an idea on things to talk about over the phone and just get the conversation started. Once we've given them a text-based overview of scope and ideas, we can start to add questions into the interview kits. So here are 1, 2, 3, 4 key questions that we want to ensure are asked in every single first call that is carried out, so that we can gain an answer to those questions. And when we're assessing candidates, we're assessing them all fairly. So we ask for current work situation, current work availability, if the job was referred to you by someone who works here, and then finally, what excites you most about the role or the company. And they should be able to give you answers to all of those questions, particularly this final one down here. What excites you most about the role or the company? I think if they are kind of forgetting about the job ad, can sometimes come across as a little bit of a red flag. I appreciate there are scenarios where applicants are maybe applying for multiple jobs at a time and they kind of lose track of what's going on. But remember, you're hiring into your business and you want someone who wants to work here. So this first call is a great opportunity to just get an initial impression, and we use it very strongly in the general screening process to decide if we move someone on to the next stage. The first call interview kit will allow us to put a score against 2 skills, written and verbal comms. And then we just have a trait which we just call vibe. That is like capturing gut feeling. So when we come to look at the applications themselves, we will open up like a fake application that we'll make, and we'll put some scores against these skills. Why these skills and not others? Well, when you're conducting a telephone call with someone and it's like a 5-10 minute conversation, I think it's only really fair to be able to capture, verbal communication and your general vibe. The reason we have written in there is just as an opportunity to score anything that they've put in their CV and anything that they've put in the application where they talk about the why are you a great fit for this role. So we kind of sneak that into the first call in general. So that's why we're scoring written communication there. Let's quickly look at the competency interview kit. Again, we put forward some scope and some ideas, split the interview into 2 core parts. Part number 1, do they have the skills for this role? Part number 2, do they have the traits to suit the nature of the work? Finish off by asking them about hobbies, passions, pursuits, etc. Tell them a bit about the role in the company, sell it to them, the good bits and the bits they need to be prepared for as well. So again, we put some questions in here. We don't, in our process, we don't place as much strong an emphasis on getting a specific answer to each of these questions. They are just like ideas to get us started. And each question is actually aligned with a skill or a trait. So what we're looking for is at least one question that is in to assess one skill or one trait. But the ultimate thing that we're trying to get through to our team who are doing the interviews is at the end of the interview, you're going to need to put a score on every skill and every trait that we are assessing in this interview. So in this interview, we're pretty much assessing every skill and every trait because we have the opportunity to do so. A face-to-face interview is a great opportunity to assess that. So there are questions there to give the interviewer ideas, but as long as they're asking questions and they're driving the conversation with the view of making a score on a skill or a trait, we are doing a good interview. At least that's the high-level theory. Like with many topics in this video, we could go really deep into the science behind conducting a great interview, but we're going to keep it simple. We're going to keep it high level. One question for each skill, one question for each trait should give us a great starting point for setting ourselves up for success. Okay, beyond evaluation, we have our final stage of the configuration process, which is super easy. It is just who is the hiring team. So we'll put myself as the lead recruiter. I'm not going to add any additional employees for now. That doesn't really need to be done, but I will just go ahead and save that draft. And then once that's done, I would go ahead here and click publish. And once that is published, it will be live on your careers website. You will have a link for it, which you can share. And you can also configure this ATS to automatically update to certain job boards as well. So we ensure that everything goes on LinkedIn and Indeed, but really that's kind of less important for us. The most important candidate sourcing tool that we use are the internal referrals, which I mentioned earlier. Okay, and there we have it. So we have done phase 1, which is identifying what we need. We've done phase 2, which is identifying who we need. And we've now completed phase 3, which is the building phase and the tool implementation. So I hope that video was useful and gave you a good overview of the end-to-end journey that we go through when hiring a candidate here in our business. I would really encourage you to spend some time just investigating the tools, the process, and just having a think about like mindset point of view. What would it look like if I tried to do hiring in my own business. Maybe you're using an agency, maybe you're putting it off, maybe you're doing it and not quite doing it properly. Everything that I want to do is help small businesses level up their hiring and get really, really good at it. And hopefully that quick overview that we gave of how we do things in our business today was useful. If you think so, I'm over on LinkedIn posting regularly, so please head over to there and give me a follow. Please share this video with somebody who you think might find it useful. Have a read of the guide, and any questions, just reach out to me directly, and I'd love to help. So thanks so much for watching, and see you next time.